the best. According to ChatGPT, being the best means that you've reached the highest level of skill, performance, or achievement in that area compared to others. In this video, we'll be looking at the players that reach the highest level of performance comparative to their peers from every season. If you guys are an OG on this channel, you would know I've done this video already. This is a continuation from where we left off. The first part of this video that has the best player from every season, all the way from season 0 to chapter 5. It will be the first link in the description. Go watch that. Chapter 5 season 1 was the first season of the most important chapter in Fortnite's history. Looking back at it now, chapter 5 was the start of a shift in competitive Fortnite. Not just the massive shift in playstyle where you can no longer qualify just off of consistent endgames, or the shift of mentality where every game just became a constant kill race between the whole lobby, but the shift in the leaderboards. This season felt like a passing of the torch, but what's weird about this is that it's not like pros were quitting. They were just playing for second. Starting us off in Chapter 5 Season 1, the best players this season were easily Cold and Acorn. Every tournament this season was duos, other than the solo victory cups, and while Cold had better placements earning in 2 of them compared to Acorn not earning in solos during Chapter 5 Season 1, it wasn't a big enough difference for me to just put Cold as the best player compared to both of them. But in duos this season, Cold and Acorn won 3 out of the 5 Duo Cash Cup finals, and in the Grand Finals, they won by over 180 points, winning 3 out of the 12 games with an average placement of 7th, meaning that in theory, they placed in the top 14 players every game. That's also with one bad game where they placed 21st, and without that game, they would have had an average placement of 5th. Acorn and Cold in Chapter 5 Season 1 had the most perfect season we've ever seen up until that point, a new high that nobody thought would ever be reached nor surpassed. Until the next season where Peterbot and Pollo set new records every tournament and would break them the next week. Chapter 5 Season 2 introduced a new feature in the new POIs, Grimgate and the Underworld, and if you touch the green water surrounding those locations, you would get green skulls around your character, and using those green skulls, you could dash. And in endgame, you would have easy rotations where if you used your dashes, you could skip a whole zone and even take height whenever you wanted to. Now that sounds pretty broken and overpowered, but it was pretty balanced because you only had 3. But what if I told you that there was a medallion that gave you infinite dashes? Peterbot and Pollo landed at Grimgate in Chapter 5 Season 2, where you guessed it, it has the dash medallion. In Chapter 5 Season 2, Peterbot and Pollo had the most dominant season of Fortnite we have ever seen. Not only were they winning every single session of scrims against players like Clix, Bugo, Reet, and every other NA pro, but they won every single Duo Cash Cup finals. And in those Cash Cup finals, they won 16 out of the 24 finals games. They even won 5 out of the 6 games in the second week. But if that wasn't enough, in the last Duo Cash Cup finals before the Grand Finals, Peterbot and Pollo won every single game, breaking their record from 2 weeks earlier. In the Grand Finals, they won 5 out of the 12 games and ended up winning by almost 400 points. In those 12 Grand Finals games, they had an average placement of 5th, and that's with a bad game 10 where they placed 30th. Without that game, they would have had an average placement of 3rd, meaning every game on average they were making it into the top 6 players. The performance from Cold and Acorn in the previous season was considered the closest thing to perfection that we would ever see in competitive Fortnite, but this season from Peterbot and Pollo was perfection. The following season, Chapter 5 Season 3, and every other season, you can make a strong argument for either Peterbot or Pollo. But I'm going to try to add variety, making sure every season isn't just the same players. For Chapter 5 Season 3, the best players are Vico and Flixie. They started off the season quite slowly, failing to qualify for the first Duo Cash Cup finals, but they brought it back the next 2 weeks, coming 5th and 3rd. With the FNCS qualifiers starting, Vico and Flixie began to heat up, winning the last 3 Duo Cash Cup finals before the Grand Finals. And in those Duo Cash Cup finals, they had the best average placement and the most average kills in all 3 of them. And in the Grand Finals, they treated it just like a Duo Cash Cup finals by placing 1st with the best average placement and the most average kills. Before we get into the next season, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, please make sure you guys like the video and subscribe. It supports me so much. Thank you guys. Even though I said I would try not to repeat players, the best player of Chapter 5 Season 4 is easily Peterbot. Since Chapter 5 Season 4 was the last season of the chapter, it had the end of the year LAN. And in the 2024 Global Championship, Peterbot and Pollo won 5 out of the 12 games and won by over 200 points. The reason Pollo doesn't join Peterbot in the best player of Chapter 5 Season 4 is because Peterbot won a majority of his tournaments this season with different teammates every event. He started off his season by winning 2 out of the 4 games in the Eval Cup with Pollo. Then a couple days later, he came second in the first Duo Cash Cup finals of the season, also with Pollo. Then the next week, he won the following Duo Cash Cup finals with Pollo, and that was their final tournament together for the season. Following that, he won the next week's Duo Cash Cup finals with Cold, and the next day won the Reload Duo Cash Cup with Bolts. 2 weeks later, he came second in the Duo Cash Cup finals again with Cold, and then 3 days after that, he won the Squads Cash Cup with Booga, Miro, and Ritual. After that, he won the next Duo Cash Cup finals again with Cold, then 2 weeks later, he won another Duo Cash Cup, but this time with Bolts. Then to cap off his season, he won another Squads Cash Cup with Booga, Cold, and Ritual. Then the next day, won the last tournament of the season, a Reload Duo Cash Cup finals with Booga. But if that wasn't enough to have Peterbot alone as the best player from this season, he also earned $500 in the Solo Victory Cash Cups. In Chapter 5 Season 4, Peterbot made over $235,000. But that brings us to the end of the chapter, and now we're on to Chapter 6 Season 1. For Chapter 6 Season 1 and the 2 seasons after, certain players dominated the season in most regions, and since I can't decide, I'll let you guys decide. Starting us off from Europe, we have Vino, Vico, and Flixie. And in the first tournament of the season, they won 2 out of the 4 games in the Eval Cup. In the Divisional Cup Finals, they won weeks 1 and 3, also coming second in week 2, fourth in week 4, and third in week 5. In the last tournament before the Grand Finals, it was an Eval Cup, they once again won 2 out of the 4 games. And to wrap up their season, they won the Grand Finals, winning a third of the games, and they also had the most eliminations in the tournament. Next up, from NA West, we have Baka, Pump, and Pars. This is the first season they added NA West back to competitive, and in the first 2 weeks of the Divisional Cup Finals, Baka, Pump, and Pars won both by a combined 220 points. And if that wasn't enough, they also won a combined 7 out of the 12 games with an average placement of 4th in both weeks. In the following 2 weeks of the Divisional Cup Finals, they also placed 3rd and 5th. But in the Grand Finals, Baka, Pump, and Pars ended up winning by over 160 points with an average placement of 5th. But if that wasn't impressive enough, they also ended up winning 6 out of the 12 games, tying Queasy and Vino's record. Next up, from NA Central, you have to mention them for this season, we have Peterbot, Ritual, and Cold. In the Divisional Cups this season, they won every single finals lobby against the other 32 best teams on NA Central. Winning every week of a tournament is crazy, but what makes it crazier is that they won by a combined margin of 496 points throughout 5 weeks, meaning that on average, they were winning the tournament with an 100-point lead over second. This would be considered a perfect season, being right up there with Peterbot and Pollo in Chapter 5 Season 2, but in the Grand Finals, they did end up coming second, losing to Pollo, Agers, and Acorn by 14 points. But that brings us to Chapter 6 Season 2, and for these 3 seasons, comment down below who you think the best team is, whether it's one of the teams I mentioned or one I forgot to mention. I'll be very interested to see who you guys think are the best players from these seasons. Starting us off from Chapter 6 Season 2, we gotta go down to OCE, and we have Alex, Resigns, and Anon. They began their season by placing 4th in the first week of the Divisional Cup Finals, but in the next week, they brought it back, placing 2nd. They obviously figured out what they needed to do to win, because from then on, they won all 3 of the remaining weeks of the Divisional Cup Finals, where in week 4, they even won 3 out of the 6 games. And in the Grand Finals, Alex, Resigns, and Anon won by almost 90 points with by far the most eliminations. But next, that brings us to Europe, where now we'll look at Vanya, Pixie, and Marius. To start off their season, they ended up placing 4th in both of the first 2 weeks of the Divisional Cup Finals, but they brought it back 2 weeks later, where they ended up winning week 4 finals, and they carried that momentum with them for the rest of the season, where in the next tournament, the Eval Cup, they won 2 out of the 4 games. And to keep vibes high, they also won 2 out of the 4 games in another Eval Cup, which was the last tournament before the Grand Finals. And in that Grand Finals, Vanya, Pixie, and Marius ended up placing 1st, winning a third of the Grand Finals games. Lastly, that brings us to NA Central with Peterbot. The reason it's Peterbot alone is because he played the first 3 weeks of Divisional Cups with Poyo instead of Ritual, and the reason Cold isn't joining him on here is because in Chapter 6 Season 2, Peterbot dominated solos as well as trios. In solos this season, Peterbot won 3 solo cash cups while also placing second twice and third once. Peterbot started off his season of trios by winning 2 out of the 4 games in the first tournament of the season, which was an Eval Cup. In the Divisional Cup finals, Peterbot and his mix of teammates won the first 4 weeks of finals, with an average margin between him and second of over 150 points. The only week they ended up not placing first was week 5, where they placed second. In the last tournament before Grand Finals, the Eval Cup, they ended up winning 2 out of the 4 games once again. And in the Grand Finals, Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual ended up placing first with the best average placement and the most eliminations in the whole tournament. This brings us to Chapter 6 Season 3, which is the last season without a definitive best player. This is the shortest season we have here, with there only being 2 weeks of the Divisional Cups and then Grand Finals. But starting us off from NA Central, we have Rapid, Kanata, and Bolts. They won the first week of the Divisional Cup Finals by winning 3 out of the 6 games, but unfortunately in the next week they only placed 4th. But they brought it back in FNCS, where in the Grand Finals they placed 3rd with the best average placement. Next up, from Europe, we have Fredoxy, Pablo Wingu, and Chino. And while they started off slow, I think they definitely deserve to be on here. In the first week of the Divisional Cup Finals, they only placed 14th. But they brought it back in week 2, where they placed 1st. In the last tournament before Grand Finals, the Eval Cup, they won 2 out of the 4 games, which gave them confidence going into the Grand Finals. And in the Grand Finals, Fredoxy, Pablo Wingu, and Chino placed 1st with the most eliminations thanks to their playstyle. That playstyle being where they take mid-game fights instead of trading for Surge. This strategy has been heavily criticized for being inconsistent, but obviously for them it works. They even used that playstyle to get a 21 kill win in the Grand Finals. But that brings us to our last team of this season. From Asia, we have Rise, Yuma, and Koyota, and they started off their season by coming 2nd and 3rd in the only 2 weeks of the Divisional Cup Finals. But this leads us to the most dominant Grand Finals performance of all time, where Rise, Yuma, and Kyoto placed 1st in the Grand Finals, winning by 500 points. A majority of those points coming from their 8 wins out of the 12 games. And they also had the most kills and the best average placement, that being 2nd place. That is easily more of a dominant tournament than the Chapter 5 Season 2 Grand Finals, where Peterbot and Poyo won 5 out of the 12 games and won by 400 points. But that brings us to our last season of the video, Chapter 6 Season 4, and with it being the last season of the chapter, it means there's an end of the year LAN. This is the season we are currently in, and the best team from this season is easily Queasy, Murstache, and Swizzy. While they started their season slowly, only placing 23rd in the first week of the Divisional Cup, they brought it back next week by placing 1st with an average placement of 4th. In the last tournament before the Global Championship, week 3 of the Divisional Cup, Queasy, Murstache, and Swizzy placed 9th. But in the Global Championship, after day 1, Queasy, Murstache, and Swizzy were winning by almost 200 points. But in no way does that mean the tournament was over. Even though in day 1 they had an average placement of 2nd thanks to winning 3 out of the 6 games, they had a really bad day 2 performance, placing 15th on the day. But at the end of it, their day 1 performance was so dominant they were still able to hoist the trophy. With Queasy, Murstache, and Swizzy winning the Global Championship, they earned themselves $450,000. And with Queasy leading them to victory with his height playstyle, he officially became the highest earning professional since World Cup, making over $1.4 million. But that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. It took me a very long time to make this video for you guys, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did happen to enjoy it, make sure you guys like, make sure you guys subscribe. If you guys want to go the extra mile, make sure you guys use code CODSFN in the Fortnite item shop. I'm very grateful for you guys making it to the end of this. But with that being said, until next time, see you guys later.